Hi, welcome to this episode of the Broke Girl Society podcast. I'm Christina, and today we have April back. We're going to chat with April about where she's at in recovery. I know that she's past 30 days, and so we're just going to have a chit chat with her and see kind of where she's at, emotionally and just kind of how she's feeling. So, hi, April.
Hey, Christina. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Coming back. Okay, so how many days are you today?
So I had to actually check my counter today, but I'm 35 days.
Yay!
Yay!
That's exciting.
Yes.
Whenever we were talking, beforehand, you were right on the cusp of it. I think you were, I look back, but you were within the first week, I think, of trying to stop gambling. And I remember you saying specifically, like, you didn't really want to talk about it. Like, you didn't want anybody, I think you didn't want to like build anybody's expectations because you weren't 100% ready. This is where you were going to go. So how are you feeling about that now?
I am feeling pretty awesome. When we had last spoken, I was 3 days in, but it didn't last long because I went back out and I gambled. I didn't want a lot of pressure on me. When we talked about it, I just didn't want to think about the days. I didn't want the pressure, probably because in my core somewhere, I knew that it wasn't going to last. And so now I'm 35 days after a relapse, and that relapse lasted, maybe a week, I don't know, a few days. Even though I knew I wanted it, it's just too much. I went back out, I gambled. And then I got serious. I was serious before. I don't want to take it away from myself because I've known that I've wanted this for a long time, but I was just afraid. It's hard to explain unless you're in that really addictive phase, but that fear, the fear of the unknown, you're so into it. It's such a huge part of your life. It was consuming me. What was I going to look like? Sorry. What was life going to look like without it? I just think about it as like my abusive lover. I finally got out of that abusive relationship,
So true. Yeah. I like it when you said that to me the other day. I was like, that is so true. Now, can I ask you,
true.
when you did slip, because I remember how I felt when I slipped after 55 days. How did it feel when you were in there gambling? Like, how did you feel? Did you feel differently? Like, for me, it felt like I was doing, like, before when I was gambling, it was like I knew it was wrong. Like, before I actually put effort into trying to quit, I knew it was wrong, that I was doing so much damage to myself, my family, blah, blah, blah. But whenever I did slip, like, I was paranoid. I was afraid that I was going to get in trouble. Like, it just felt wrong to me, which is why I'm thankful it felt like that, because I think I lasted, I think it was a total of 3 days that I just kind of was trying to chase my losses or whatever during that. But the whole time I had this paranoid feeling. I can't even explain it. How was it for you though?
I can relate to that. I don't think it was, for me, it wasn't, I can't explain it as being like paranoid, but I felt sick. Like I didn't want to be there. I'm sitting there hitting that button, and in the back of my mind, I'm just like, what are you doing with yourself? Why can't you just stop this? And almost like I just wanted this money to run out because I just didn't want to keep doing it, but I could not stop.
Like, you're on autopilot.
I just wanted no money. Just get this money out of this machine, get it out of my hands, give it all back. I don't want it. I just need to get out of there.
So you have nothing to play on. That's the only way I could leave. I would have to literally have nothing to play on. Like, nothing is the only way that I could leave. And I'm glad I'm not in that cycle at the moment, but or hopefully ever again.
Yes. And I think, when I'm still very, very guarded because I know I've only got 35 days. So I am totally not getting ahead of myself because it's just waiting, that it's just waiting in the background, and I have to be very on guard with it and not get cocky because it'll swallow me right back up. So
it will.
Yeah. So very consciously, I'm definitely not getting ahead of myself. I know that. But what I can say is it's been 35 days, my first ever 35, I mean, my first ever try at stopping without it being COVID, where it was forced upon me.
Mm-hmm.
My first conscious effort where I actually made it this far. And it's possible. You don't think it's possible in the beginning when I last talked to you. I mean, it's just it's hard to explain, but it can happen.
It
I mean,
can.
yeah, it can happen if you're just ready for that change. Like you just know, like I can't keep doing this.
What are you
What
doing
am I
different?
doing?
What are you doing different? I know we talked about
Um,
like you're not real um like in the step work or anything yet, which is fine. It can take people years to dive into step work. But I do know that you started a GA meeting.
I did. I started a GA meeting. I think I've gone to. I think it's like going to be my fifth meeting this week. So I guess four meetings every Wednesday. It's uh, I feel very like I belong there. It feels
Mm-hmm.
really good to see people in person and just all different walks of life, all different colors, ages, genders, whatever it is. And we all share that same addiction, issue, problem,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to call it. And I've heard on different podcasts, yours and others, where there's just so many people that are out there and they want to help you. And
Yeah.
there really are. There's so many people, they just want you to succeed. I remember I went into the meeting, I was very afraid, just because it was my first one. I had called before because it was in a church in a basement. I was like, where do I go? And he was really nice. And as soon as I walked in, he said, April,
Oh yeah.
the chair. And yeah, right from that beginning, it felt good. Just sharing, in this meeting, it's kind of a small meeting, so it's the same faces, maybe a new one every week or two. Well, I mean, not that I've gone that many times, but just from what I'm gathering. And um, yeah, so I am going, and I look forward to going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did
it gets
too.
to that.
It was like it's something about, I had years of no commitment. I couldn't commit to anything. For me personally, I couldn't commit to anything, but for some reason that meeting, I made a commitment to that meeting, and I've went every Saturday. And even though I'm not 100% GA with what I do, just having those people, having that reassurance that I know that they're there, that they're going to understand what I'm going through. And it's kind of like a beacon of my week, by going to this meeting, it just kind of sets the tone for the rest of my week. Plus, I do two more local meetings over Zoom. But yeah, so it is nice knowing that there is a place for you that you can go and share and relate to people. And our meetings are still pretty small too. And I know COVID is going to mess up, any chance we had of building any, growing. But so is there anything else that you've been doing that's been helping?
As far as the step work, I just got the workbook. I had the book, the woman's step book, but I never bought the workbook to go along with it. I've been listening to different like step podcasts and whatnot. I haven't really dove in. I have kind of skimmed over, the steps, and I'm going to start working them. Definitely, I want to. As far as recovery wise, I'm just abstaining at this point and clearing my head and trying to recognize myself again and the reasons behind my issues. Setting some boundaries within my
Mm-hmm.
personal life, which has not been very comfortable.
Right.
And yeah,
Do you want to talk
it's
about
hard.
that? Do you want to talk about,
Um,
like, you don't have to get into like the details, but do you want to talk about what it was like, um, kind of coming the fog was lifting and you were starting to we had this conversation where you were starting to kind of feel these feelings again, things that maybe you didn't realize you weren't really addressing or feeling. How was that for you?
It was tough because the fog starts lifting, like you said, you start getting more clear minded. And like you said to me, you're starting to feel again. You're actually starting to feel emotion again. And it was like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
yes, that is exactly what it is. And you said, it's probably was stuff that bothered you pre addiction. And you're right. It was, it's just, yeah, I won't get into too much detail on it, but I was very irritable feeling these feelings, but I did address, the people that I've kind of not, I put the boundaries in place, but I talked to like my family and whatnot, and they accepted it pretty well. But it just it's hard because when you're so used to giving everything, and then you gotta like say, hey, wait a minute, I gotta pull back a little bit, and I need this now. I need this back from you. It's not comfortable when you have to do that, but it's necessary. And I'm realizing that. And in the end, it's working out fine. Like last week, I had my kids over. We were out playing bing bags. Everybody it just was the highlight of my weekend. It's just
Mhm.
so awesome to have something that is so important to me that I kind of demanded happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, and there have been some definitely some very, very hard days. It is not rosy, like these picture perfect days at all. But, because I just never knew what I would do after the addiction. Like, how would I live without gambling? Those first feelings, that's how I felt. And I'm living, I'm surviving,
Mhm.
I'm here, and I'm actually starting to live like a normal person again, which is pretty cool because before, when I was so into my addiction, even going to the grocery store, it's so crazy, but I would look at people and think, like, how could these people just be walking around like this, like happy, just shopping for groceries? Like, don't they want, because my mind was just always like action, gambling, can't wait to get out
Mhm.
of here, pay for these things and, get back. So,
Yeah. And
um,
I think too, the reason why it was important kind of I wanted to have this conversation while you're just at 30 days is because, I see a lot of times where people, they can't quite make it 30 days or they make it just past 30 days and they relapse. And I think from just my own recovery and from talking to so many other women in recovery, um, it's when those feelings start to show up and the fog lifts, those feelings start to show up and it gets really overwhelming. And I think a lot of times that will trigger people to go back because it gets to be too much. And it could be stuff in a lot of cases where it's stuff that triggered your addiction, or triggered your compulsive gambling to get worse because you weren't dealing with things. We weren't setting boundaries. We weren't taking care of ourselves. We were doing all these different things and taking care of everybody else's needs. And so when you come out of recovery and you're trying to clear your head and you're trying to um, just figure out how to not gamble today, and then all of a sudden, like something comes out of nowhere. And whereas before you just maybe ignored it because you were going to go gamble later and you wouldn't have to deal with it. But now we have to deal with it. And that's I think the difference in pushing forward in your recovery and falling back in your recovery is, like you said, it was uncomfortable. And it is uncomfortable, especially when people are used to benefiting from having no boundaries from us. Then they'll start to kind of get huffy or fight back or throw something in our faces. That's a lot of times they'll throw it in our faces. And whatever it is, um, that would make us just want to withdraw. Like, okay, retreat, you're fine, you win.
right.
But it's just setting these firm boundaries and living through that uncomfortable feeling. Because once
Yeah.
you do, and you can probably say this to whoever's listening, once you get through those uncomfortable feelings, the next uncomfortable feeling that comes gets a little easier to deal with, and then the next one.
Yeah, while you're saying those things, I'm so just to share a little story about what happened last week. So, I'm super close with my daughters. They're my best friends. They know about my addiction. They both listen to the podcast. And if you recall in the podcast, I talked about when my daughter was in labor and just to be more clear about it. So yeah, her husband was deployed in the military. So she was all alone. It wasn't that he was just out there. She was alone. She came home to give birth, and while she was in active labor, I was her person, to be there during everything. Um, she, I said I was going home, and I stopped and I played some slots. And while I'm sitting there at the machine, she called me and said, Mom, I'm, you know, um, so I went back. I mean, of course, I didn't miss the baby's birth or anything like that, but I disappeared for a while, and it's a horrible thing for me. It's so hard for me to even say that. Um, but she shared with me last week, because we got into a little spat, and she shared with me that hurt her. What I did hurt her, and she had not told me that. She had listened to the podcast before, but she never told me how she felt about it. And I just didn't think that it bothered her. So my first reaction was to, just defense. I was sick. How could you do this to me? Like, she's throwing it in my face. Like, I felt like that. And without validating her feelings,
Right.
I immediately reacted and wanted to control the situation, wanted her to see everything the way I wanted her to see it. And that's not fair to her.
Right.
And I didn't want, like, it was a horrible feeling. I literally, we never fight, and we didn't really talk for a few days, and it ate me apart,
Sure.
because I, I was stubborn still in those 3 days. But as time went on, I I was like, okay, you know what? I have to try to see things through her eyes. I can't always control every situation. But before, I would have went right and played. Let me
Mhm.
go play, forget it. Let me get some of this frustration out. I'm just gonna, but no, I sat with it. I sat with it. I digested it. I processed it. And then I called her and I apologized, and I took it all. Like, I'm sorry. That was me. You didn't deserve that. I accepted everything. And that's, I think, all she needed from
Yeah.
me. And
Yeah.
we were totally, then that was it. It was past, and we were moving on. And, I just have to remember that just because I'm going through this and I'm still fresh and I'm fragile, I am,
Mhm.
but I'm not the only person in life right now.
Right.
I
And
have,
yeah, that's really hard to come to terms with right early in our recovery. And even still, I find myself, um, here I am almost 6 months, and I still find myself realizing I am not the center of the universe. And, it is a lot, because, we are, I can relate 100% to that, trying to defend yourself, to trying to defend, well, this is what this was, and how can you be upset with me for it? But you know what? They have every right to feel how they feel. And that is something that I struggled with too early on, especially with my twin sister. Um, she would come at me, and I would be like, get all defensive and be like, well, I obviously had an addiction, but that's not the excuse for everything, is it? I mean, yes,
it's
it played a huge part in our actions, but it can't be
exactly,
everything.
it can't be everything. We have to be accountable, and it's only going to make us stronger
Yeah.
by being that person that we know what we want to be. So when we're in this active, horrible addiction, you know what you want life to look like, and you know what you want to be, and whether it's going back to what you were before the addiction or not, but you know what you want it to look like. And that's just a part of getting to that point. Like I told her when I called her, I said, I'm working on myself. I'm just trying to be a better person all around to do the right thing. And this is the right thing. And I'm sorry. I
That's
am
amazing.
sorry. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it felt so good. And she has so much going on in her life too.
Mhm.
So why not make it one less thing, and let's
Yeah.
get past this and talk it through and be healthy about it, not just sweep it under the rug or bury it or not address it. Like, let's just be face to face and do this.
That just gives me the feel goods all
Yeah.
over because that just seems like such an amazing just a story as far as coming through kind of those tough early days. Like, yeah, we both still have a long way to go, but yeah, that's to be able to process that, because I remember you sharing that story in the first podcast, and I could hear the hurt in your voice, and like you didn't even really want to talk about it because I could tell. And then for you to be able to talk about it and say, we had this conversation, it was tough, it was uncomfortable, but we talked about it and we moved forward. I mean, that just makes my heart feel good.
Yeah.
My mom heard that conversation too, and she says, you know what, you need to share a story. And I was like, what? And
Mm.
she's like, remember when I had my heart attack and I was in the hospital and you went home to get me clothes? And I was like, oh, I do remember that.
Oh,
It was right at the cusp of my before my addiction really took hold, but it was probably right there at the beginning. And she did have a heart attack, and they had taken her back into emergency surgery or whatever to put the stent in. And anyway, she fortunately came through all that, but it was a very, very stressful, I can't even tell you the emotional toll that took on me, to have my mom, go through that. And so once she was back in the hospital, back in her hospital room and recovering, and I went home just to get her, some fresh clothes, because it was all unexpected. And so I went home to get some fresh clothes. Well, my other sister had made it up there, so I knew there was somebody with her, and I had to get away from it. I was so overwhelmed with my emotions. And I went and gambled, and they were calling me wanting to know when I was going to be I think it was probably, I can't remember, but it was something they were waiting on, or something like that. And I ended up, winning or something when I was there. So it just kept me there longer. And
yeah.
finally I did, after so many phone calls, I left. But my mom remembers that story, like, you were gambling. Like, I was waiting on this. And I remember at the time, none of us thought it was a problem. It was just kind of odd. But she said that she'd heard you talking about your story, and she's like, I want to make sure that you tell your story, because there are all these little things that I forget. I have
Yeah.
years and years of stories, and I'm not a huge sharer. I'll talk with anybody and I'll share my experiences with it and stuff like that. But man, I've got some deep stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm working on it, trying to share more about that. So when I hear people actually share their stories and their hurt and their pain, I, you know, I just respect it so much, because I
Yeah.
still I still struggle now. Like, if like me and you on a one-on-one conversation, of course, like when we
Right.
have our one-on-one conversations, that's a completely different story. But I still struggle, like even in meetings, to really kind of share all the hurt and pain and all that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
So
thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's it doesn't make me feel good that you have, that
oh,
that
of course
happened to you
not.
as
Yeah.
well, but
Yeah.
it shows how similar we are,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there's so many other people that have stories just like ours. It's
Yeah.
just that was our number one priority, even over the people that we love the most. I mean, not I don't want to speak for you, but it
No,
wasn't
you
that
can for me when it comes to that.
yeah, it just took such a hold of me. And what was I thinking? How could I ever justify doing
Mhm.
that to my daughter, who was here to her first baby, her husband's deployed, she's all
Yeah.
alone. I mean, that's,
But
but
I
I'm,
think we all have those stories.
yeah. And you know what? Um, she's proud of me today. Both
Yay.
my girls are, and so I will also share. So with my older daughter, she was my gambling partner on Fridays. That was our thing. I shared that on the podcast as well. And after she listened to the podcast, when I relapsed, I said, "Hey," on the Friday or whatever. I don't even know if it was Friday, Saturday after, but I said, "Hey, do you want to go gamble?" And she refused to go with me. She
Oh,
refused to go with me. And that was a huge turning point. I think that's pretty much what pushed me into sticking with it, because she, at that point, put up her boundary towards me with gambling. She didn't want me to keep hurting myself or feeling, because she had no idea how I was really feeling until she
mm-hmm.
listened. And we have never gone to gamble after that, after I spoke to you. And that really made me see things differently as well. You
Kudos to
know,
her
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
standing up to
So
her mom.
yeah, I got some good girls. I got some good
Yeah.
kids. Yeah.
Well, my mom had
Um,
to do that with me because we were, I mean, and that's why I think I'm so caught up in this generational gambling that I keep talking about, because it, for a lot of us, it is something to do with our moms or our daughters. It's kind of social hour and kind of those things. And when my mom cut back because it was starting to become a problem for her, I'd be like, hey, do you want to go play free play or something like that? This is when I was still gambling. She didn't really know, how bad it was. And she was like, no, I'll spend too much money. No. And so she kind of had to start doing that with me too. I mean, I still went, but
yeah.
she kind of did that. But I know that you were kind of concerned too of maybe starting to kind of follow down that path. And so that's really great to hear that she's putting up boundaries with you.
She is. I mean, if she's doing, I know for a fact that she's nowhere near where I was or anything
Oh
like that. I
yeah.
know she enjoys it, but who knows if I would have kept going and given money. I mean, it's a fun thing,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
Yep.
what could have happened. I mean, maybe nothing, but yeah. So I was very. It kind of hurt in the moment.
Sure.
'Cause she never
Yeah.
rejected me with gambling. I felt
That
like,
little
oh my
sting.
gosh, yeah,
Yeah.
it stung, but it was the right thing for her to do, and I'm so glad she did.
Well, and I think that's another thing when we address those feelings is we have to kind of get used to having our feelings hurt, or just whatever feeling comes at us, whether it's like something that hurts our feelings because somebody said something that, because we are like, even as far in as I am today, I still can get defensive, or I can still, but the difference is now is I recognize it
Yeah,
fairly quickly. And so, whereas it might have taken me earlier days, 2 or 3 days to kind of come to terms with it, now it might take me 30 minutes to be like, you know what? Okay. Yeah.
right, right.
And this may be something that I struggle with, just throughout my recovery, just kind of, it's probably just for me, like just a character defect, because I'm
Hmm.
always like extremely defensive about everything. But I hope that I'm getting better with it. So I know anxiety is been a big issue. It's been a really big issue for me too lately. How are you handling that?
I think well, I don't know. I mean, I'm always going to be an anxious person. I've always been anxious my entire life. I think uh, most gamblers do struggle with anxiety. I mean, I know in the meetings I've been to, pretty much everybody has an
Yeah.
anxiety disorder of some sort. But I've been just keeping busy, trying to recognize those feelings. I've been struggling with it my whole life, so I know once I'm starting to bounce around in my head, like I need to take a step back and chill, relax. Um, Still trying to do my walks. Do some type of exercise most days. But
That helps
I am
me.
not really, it's definitely lessened since I haven't been gambling, just
Yeah.
naturally.
Yeah.
Naturally, yeah, because
Not stressed over
before
like
you'd
juggling.
leave and you just hate yourself and get so down on yourself, and middle of the night, waking up, thinking about all the money you spent
Mm-hmm.
and not able to sleep. And I mean, I've always struggled with sleep. I mean, insomnia, I've already accepted it's a part of me, but at
Me too.
least now I'm not, the gambling is not there.
Yeah.
And like when you were saying about getting feelings hurt and stings and whatnot. So yeah, I was having a conversation with my husband the other day, and we're just kind of hanging out in the pool. And I don't know what it was, but he said something, and I said, I 100% trust you with everything. Like I trust you. I don't even know if it was like what the conversation was about,
Sure.
but it's true. I do. I trust him, with everything. He's never given me a reason not to. And, he couldn't say that back. So he just said, well, I love you,
Ah.
but he didn't say, usually the response to something like that was,
Mm-hmm.
I trust you too. And his response was, well, I love you. And no, but I do not expect him to trust me. Like I don't deserve his trust at all. But yeah, I mean, hopefully one day I'll get it back again. Probably not for a
You will.
while.
I'm sure he already sees the changes in you. And for me too, like this part of my recovery is just trust is a big thing. Because we do lose trust in those that we love. But for me, I'm struggling with just trusting myself. There
Mm.
was a topic on a meeting that I was in the other day, and it was kind of do we deserve merits or accolades for progress and recovery versus everyday people who live normal lives, who do normal things and don't get merits. And to me, it wasn't about getting the merits or the pat on my back. It was more about the mile markers, like I'm going in the right direction because I can't even trust myself with where I'm at or what I'm doing. Am I doing something good? Am I doing something bad? Because I had so many years of just bad decisions. Like I couldn't make the right decision if I wanted to until I made the decision to fight for my life and start
Yeah.
recovery. That was the first best decision I'd made in years. But that being said, I second guess myself on everything. Yeah, it's just for me, it's a big struggle. But every day that I decide to go with my gut, and I live up to the promise I made to myself that I will not gamble, that I will find recovery, that I will help others. Um, I'm learning to trust myself. I'm building that trust in myself. And for me, getting my trust back, the trust in myself back is more important than the trust in others for
Yes,
me
that's
at this
the
moment.
most important thing. It
Yeah.
really is.
And
I
I think
mean,
people
I'm
will
so
see
proud
that.
of you. Yes. I mean,
Thanks.
and you should be so proud of yourself because to be honest with you, I wouldn't be here. Most likely I would not be here at this point, 35 days in, without you. You have been a huge support to me. And I know that in time, you're gonna like you said, it's happening every day. You make that promise, you fulfill it, and you get stronger. And
Mhm.
you should be super proud of yourself.
I
Definitely.
am proud, but I'm
I
proud of
I
you, and you
well,
did it
thanks.
yourself. I am
Thank
just
you.
fortunate enough to be able to walk beside you while you do it. So,
Well,
um,
thank you.
but you have a great husband from what you've told me. And I bet he does trust you more than you think. But
I
I
think
bet
he
he wants
does.
to maybe just not put so much pressure on you at this moment.
I think so. And I think because in the beginning when I first went to the meeting, I was like, okay, I'm going to a meeting. I don't want to talk about it, but I'm just letting you know where I'm going to be tomorrow. I'm going to a meeting. He said, good, good. Okay. He didn't ask me about it. I came home, or he came home from work, and I said, I went to the meeting and I shared with him, and he just listened and was proud of me. And I am very lucky that he is the way he is because I know not a lot of people have that. And I do appreciate him like crazy for it because, without having the support that I have, whether it's, my kids, my husband, the group, everything, you got to utilize everything, the
Mm-hmm.
meetings, the support system. And I think it's really important. I'm almost like an open book. I think now when I go to the meetings, I feel like I share a little bit too much with these
No, you
people.
can't. You can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think so, but I shared about with my daughter in my meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and these people just are so understanding. They give such great advice, and people that have been in recovery for a lot of years. And before I used to think, how can they possibly relate to me? And they do. They remember where they were, and they've helped so many people along the way
Yeah.
that they keep in touch with it. And it's just so refreshing. And what I would definitely say is the meetings, they're scary, a little intimidating. You're picturing in your mind what it's going to look like when you walk in. And maybe it kind of does look like that. Just kind of dark church basement, and, all these older people sitting there. And yeah, I guess that is what it was when I went in. But once you get in there and you get to the depth of the meetings, oh my gosh, it's invaluable.
Most definitely. The
Yeah.
advice that they have, and they come to these meetings every week, and they've been coming to them every week for years. And so they hear all the stories, and it helps reinforce their recovery. It helps them to help others. And so yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I remember in the first podcast you're like, how could these people understand where I'm at? I'm so brand new. And I think early in recovery, I mean, I thought that too. Early in recovery, but I've listened to podcast interview that I did right about 30 days, and my views then and where my views are now, they are constantly changing. And as I work towards recovery, and I talk with so many people, my views on things that I thought that I was so hard knocked on, like I struggle with the idea of controlled gambling. Um I don't allow it to be talked about in the group because it is triggering for some. And I know that some, and so I've always, well, since I started my recovery, I've been like, controlled gambling doesn't work. We were all controlled gamblers until we weren't, right? There was a point where we all could go in, play,
Yeah.
maybe win a little, walk out. But I think maybe my idea of controlled gambling isn't maybe the same as the clinical term for controlled gambling. It's kind of like when they bring people, down from certain drugs, they do it with controlled drugs,
Right.
and kind of brings them down and off, and people have gone on and lived drug-free lives after that. And I guess that's the way they look at it with gambling, to be able to give them, bring them down off of that. But for me, it's just, we have to deal with money for the rest of our lives. And, drugs, they don't necessarily have to deal with for the rest of their lives. So my understanding of it is constantly changing as I hear different opinions and different views. Now, if it's a recreational thing where I'm going to learn to control this so that I can still gamble and have gambling in my life, then that's a conversation that I refuse to have. But maybe in clinical terms, I have a lot more learning and understanding to do, I guess, about that. But I
Well,
guess the whole point of that was,
I see things exactly the same as you, because I think for most people, we all try to become controlled gamblers before
right.
like you're always thinking, well, maybe if I could just go once a week and spend just this amount of money. And I don't know about you, but I know I tried it many times. Like if we just do it,
Leave the money in the car, walk out to the
yeah,
car,
and
and
then
then,
you're running out to
yeah,
your car 3 times. Yeah, it's
yeah.
just not doable. And for me personally, it's just something that I am accepting that can't be a part of my life anymore.
Yeah, me too.
But I'm also now seeing that life is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It
Without it,
really is. Yes,
without
and you're
it.
actually seeing life again. You know,
Yeah.
you're looking at the sun and appreciating it. And I mean, maybe not when it's like 100 degrees, but
Like me.
it's
Yeah.
but you're you're appreciating life again. It comes
Yeah.
back. It comes back. And I think when you're so heavily into it, you just feel so hopeless and like, this is
Hmm.
it. And how am I ever going to live without this? This is my whole life. This is all I think about, all I dream about.
Hmm.
And I was there a month ago,
Hmm.
because I loved gambling. I told you I love gambling. That was our first conversation. I could
Right.
literally say, and today I could honestly say that I I mean, I can't say I hate it because I'm not there yet, but um,
You can say you love life
it's
more.
I love life more. I love myself more. And
Hmm.
I don't ever want to go back to that. And I pray that I don't, but of course I'm being very guarded. I'm not getting ahead of myself like I did
Yeah.
the last time and went back because uh, I just have to realize it's too it will suck me right back in. It's just
One day at a
waiting and
time.
it's lurking in the background for me to be weak at that
It's
moment. And
waiting.
I just have to
Yeah.
keep myself strong and my mind strong and stay busy and I just definitely am grateful for my life today compared to where I was a month ago.
Yeah. And you know what? 30 days leads to 35 days. 35 days leads to 40 days.
Yeah.
However you want to do it, just focus every day on just not gambling today. And it adds up. And I think too, the further we get away from it, you know, the more it's easier to own our story and have those tough conversations and to feel those tough feels. And, the more authentic we start being. Like
Yes.
I just learning to trust myself, like we talked about earlier, learning to trust myself, learning to actually figure out what I like and what I don't like, what I need
Right.
and what I don't need. Like these are things that I just ignored for years, and which fed into my need to gamble and my urge to gamble and things like that. And so as I figure these things out and I deal with these things, I haven't, knock on wood, I don't have any around me. I have not had urges to gamble. I have not wanted to gamble. I've never dreamed about gambling, even since I stopped gambling. Now I've had urges early on, but now I don't, even though I talk about it so much, um, I don't really have urges at all to gamble. I just throw all my energy into the Broke Girl Society and, now my anxiety, but I've been doing physical work for my anxiety. I've been doing walks. I post that in the group and things like that. And just really trying to focus on nature and connecting with nature and those kinds of things to help with anxiety. So, well, I just really appreciate you checking in today and just kind of letting us know how you feel. And I'm just really, really happy for you. And I'm just so happy that
Yeah.
I get
Thank you.
to be a part of your recovery. And, um, you know, no matter what, I'm always here. Um, and just, I'm glad to be your friend.
Well, I'm so thankful for you, and I'm feeling good. And yeah, hopefully this helps other people knowing that it's possible. 30 days, I mean, well, 35 days. I
35 days.
can't
Yeah.
shortchange
No,
myself.
absolutely not. 35 days and 6 hours if that's what you need.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, hey, thanks. Thanks. Thanks again. I'll edit that out.